Guild Wars, Sea of Sorrows. Chapter 40. The Balthazar's trident dropped anchor in Sanctum Harbor, her sails furled and her long green and gold banners waving with wounded dignity from the tops of her tremendous masts. Scarred and burned wood showed how much damage she'd taken, and a narrow hole in her hull just above the waterline marked the spot where she'd been pierced by the Nomad 2. One of her sails was burned through, and her rear jibs had been broken by the fire cannons of the pursuing Exebec. Other ships of the Criadan fleet were even more damaged. Many, both from Criada and from Lion's Arch, had been lost in the assault. That was not my fault, Yam shouted from the Nadir Shill as she pulled alongside the other two ships. Matcha promised she was going to use her magic to help the city. She said absolutely nothing about stealing a ship or detonating herself in the harbor. It was completely unprofessional of her, and I shall be filing an ex post facto grievance with the Arcane Council of Radasum. She saved our lives, Kobaya corrected him wryly. Yes, well, I shall also be proposing that the Arcane Council award her the Incantrix Luminous, our highest award of honor. The Asura captain sniffed disdainfully and crossed his arms. But that still doesn't absolve her of the indignity. Isaye and Kobaya helped Sycox across a gangplank that had been placed between the Nadir Shill and the Balthazar's trident. Fasher and Assam followed close behind, keeping their hands on the hilts of their pistols. On the Balthazar's trident, armored seraph lowered their halberds in readiness, bristling at the char. The warband snarled, teeth bared, ready for a fight. "Cut it out, guys," Kobaya managed to say, his breath coming in short gasps. Though he wasn't able to yell, his soft words quelled the char as if they'd been a tribune's bellow. Kobaya turned to glare at the seraph, aware that nothing he said could command them. "Stand down, seraph." As the prince's marines stepped back, confused, Adair shoved his way through the guard. "You heard me," he growled, pushing the blades of their pole arms to the floor. "These char and their fleet just saved our lives. They may be our enemies, but you'll treat them with respect or you'll be swimming home." Properly chagrined, the seraph relaxed a bit and stepped to the side. "They aren't." Breathing between taut lips, Kobaya kept his arm around Isaya's shoulders to steady his balance. "Your enemy, that is. These char are my crew, citizens of Lion's Arch." "Whoa, Kobe." Sycox stepped closer and gripped him gently. "You're weaving." He frowned, looking his friend over with concern. "You've gone pale, and your eyes aren't focusing. I say, help him sit down." Together, they lowered Kobaya to the deck, keeping the bloodied seraph cloak tucked about him. The char pulled his hand away from Kobaya's body, staring down at his paw, which was red with more than the rusty color of his fur. Adair's eyes widened at the sight. He snapped his fingers at the seraph, auburn hair brushing the tanned skin of his cheekbones. "Bring bandages. We need to tend to his wounds." One of the Marines came forward, carrying medical supplies, and began to look at Kobaya's ravaged hand, the bloodied puncture in his back, the wound on his ribs that had again ripped open. The Marine's gentle fingers drew a gasp of breath from the Commodore, and everything blurred. Kobaya's vision narrowed. "Whoa, there, Kobaya." Ayer gripped his shoulder, holding him steady. Kobaya caught sight of a concerned glance between the prince and Isay. But things had stopped making as much sense as they had before. "I'm fine." Kobaya tried to push the prince's hand away. "I just need a minute to rest." "Captain Isay?" "I think someone's waiting to see you," Livia said smoothly. A bright voice keened from across the deck. "Mama!" It was the homesick call of a little boy. Dane beamed as he pulled his hand away from one of the shining blade, racing over the boards toward his mother. Isay opened her arms and wrapped him up tightly, holding the child snugly to her as he laughed. I saw the prince's crown, and I ate an omnomberry tart. And Livia told me a story about Queen Salma. Dane's voice chattered on eagerly as Isaiah kissed his face. Livia smiled at Isaiah. Your son was very brave. He takes after his father, Isaiah said, holding the child close. She tousled his mahogany locks and turned toward Kobaya. Dane, I want you to meet Kobaya. The little boy stared at the Commodore and ducked his face into his mother's dark hair, suddenly shy. Colby, this is your son. As he met the child's eyes, which were blue and wide with innocence, Kobaya felt as though he were young again, standing on the docks of Old Lion's Arch, teasing a little girl about mermaids and keeping her safe from bad dreams. They had the same pure gaze, the same bashful smile. Kobaya reached out and put a hand on the boy's shoulder, his heart filled with joy. He's beautiful, I say. He's a scamp, that's what he is. I say squeezed the boy close, just like his father. With a smile, Kobaya reached into his pocket. I don't know if it's the kind of thing boys like, but here I have a present for you. Kobaya drew the rag doll from his inner pocket, pressing it into the child's hands. Someday, I'll tell you a story about my sister, Vivian. This was her doll. Now it's yours. Keep her close, and she'll keep you safe, just like she's always done for me. Kobaya folded the boy's hands around the soft rag doll, smiling as the child looked at it with curious eyes. Although the boy didn't understand the toy's significance, he held the rag doll close, cradling it like a treasured friend. What's her name? Dane asked inquisitively. Paula, Kobaya replied. Dane ran a gentle hand over her yellow yarn curls and smiled. Kobaya let out a grunt as fresh bandages were tightened around his waist. His injured hand was wrapped with strips of fabric, blood spotting the white canvas like foam on a still tidal pool. Your Highness, the medic said quietly. His wounds are extensive. I've done everything I can to help him, but the Commodore's lost a great deal of blood. I don't know if... The Seraph's words trailed off. I'll be fine. Kobaya pushed the medic away. I just need some rest. At home. With my family. Isay looked at him fondly, and they shared a smile. If we still have a home, Fasher growled, his voice low and threatening. The Aryans are gone, but the war's not over. Kriata still holds Lion's Arch hostage. Adair bristled. Before the prince could speak, Livia's cool voice broke in. His Royal Highness has come to an accord with Commodore Mariner. I'm certain that no further violence will be necessary. For a moment, Kobaya thought the pompous Kryadon might go back on his word. Adair smoothed the sleeves of his ruined doublet, frowning thoughtfully as he considered the implications of their bargain. At last, the prince nodded somberly. So I did. Full independence, I believe, was our agreement. The Char broke into wide smiles and roars of approval, and both the Nomad 2's crew and the Asura under Yam's command began to chatter in gleeful satisfaction. Kobaya held up a hand to quiet them. Addressing the prince, he said, You were looking to make history here in Lion's Arch, Prince Adair. I respectfully suggest that you've done exactly that, though not in the way you were intending. He took a deep breath, feeling the wounds and aches of his body throbbing with the movement. A conquered people will always resist you, Adair. But allies will fight by your side. Kobaya put a hand on Sikox's mane, ruffling the Char's reddish fur between his fingers. You'd be surprised what we can achieve together. That is the lesson of my city, Prince Adair. Kobaya raised his voice, aware that everyone on deck, Char, human, and Asura, Kriadan and citizen of Lion's Arch alike, was listening. Together, Tyria is stronger than it could ever be in parts. Adair nodded, his features softening. A twinkle of his old impudence sparkled in the prince's eye. All of you gathered here on this day, he demanded, voice rising to address the gathering. I call on you to witness my words as Prince of Divinity's reach and heir to the Kriadan throne. The prince drew his sword and held it sideways, giving his oath on the blade. On this day, the nation of Creata hereby recants all authority over the city of Lion's Arch, and the lands it claims, so long as it continues to fight against the threat of Or. With courage, it's earned its freedom and our friendship. He bent his knee and held the blade out to Kobaya as the others crowded around them on the Balthazar's Trident's deck. In return, do you, as Commodore of this city, pledge your goodwill to Creata, as her friend in peace and her ally in time of need? Kobaya placed his hand on the steel of the prince's sword. As leader of the council, I, Kobaya Mariner, do so swear. Livia called out to all those assembled, her dark eyes flashing beneath the silken sway of her scarlet hair. Let the word travel across Tyria Lion's Arch shall forever be free. Cheers erupted from the gathered crew of both ships. The Shah roared in approval, and even the Seraph looked relieved and pleased by the accord. Other ships in the harbor, sailing close enough to hear the news passed by eager shouts, took up the cry until the crew of every ship in the harbor were waving their hats and firing their guns in celebration. Did you see that crazy Asura? Sycox flopped down on the deck beside Kobaya, his paw resting on the Commodore's shoulder, claws gently curved around his old friend's arm. Tricked us, stole the pride, and then blew up our ship. Kobaya nodded. You should never have taught her how the compression unit worked. The spotted char chuckled. Too true. He shook his head, mane rustling around his brawny shoulders. That little ear flapper did the right thing in the end. I'd give her the greatest compliment a soldier of the legions can give. Sycox crossed one arm in front of his chest in an Iron Legion salute, looking out toward the area where the maw had been destroyed. She died like a char. So she did, my friend. So she did. Kobaya closed his eyes, a wash of exhaustion flooding over him. It was done. Although there was still much to do to rebuild the city's fleet and restore her trade routes, with this agreement, more and more travelers and merchants would come to Lion's Arch. The city was safe, and there would be peace. As celebrations broke out around them, Kobaya was acutely aware of Isae's presence at his side, her arms cradling his body and her eyes filled with love. When she spoke, her voice was a soft, welcome whisper in his ear. Come on, Kobaya. Let's go home. Weather the storm. A Tyrian sea shanty. You don't know a storm till you ride the wind. Beneath cold and blackened skies, till you're sailing through a thunderhead. With the lightning in your eyes, death. He laughs in the sails, and the jags and the bloody sun won't rise. A sailor's life's filled with toil and strife. The sea's both boon and bane, where Creata bound on a northern tide. Through the lightning and the rain, we'll sail through all these stormy nights till we're safe at home again. Open sea, and we're homeward bound. Fair or foul the weather. The captain swears we'll make our port, though the sun's burned to an ember. If the dead ships come and the darkness falls, then we'll all go down together. She's a restless sloop with a six-armed maid, a dancing on her prow. Her brassy cannons crease the sea, but the weather's chased her down her compass spins, and her captain screams, and the crew's all dead and drowned. The sails are rent and the engines blown. The keel is split to stern. We lost the rudder to the tide, and the mizzenmast is burning the reins like nails, and our harbor's lost, and the compass spins and turns. Now the darkness comes, and the stars above circle round like sharks at sea. Instead of fighting for our lives, we should be sitting at our ease. But I chose the strife of a sailor's life and the ocean. She chose me. The wind, it howled, and the thunder boomed. Thought the storm might just prevail, but we shouldered on till the break of day. And we tamed that fearsome gale, held to courage and to honor. And we lived to tell the tale. No, you don't know a storm till you ride the wind. beneath cold and blackened skies, till you're sailing through a thunderhead, with the lightning in your eyes. Death, he laughs in the sails and the jags, and the bloody sun won't rise. Acknowledgements. Special thanks to Jeff Grubb, Scott McGough, and David Wilson, 3 exceptional companions in this journey through the history of Lion's Arch. Your invaluable input, insight, and patience have made Tyria and this book come to life. About the author. Ree Soesbee is an award-winning writer, game designer, and author of more than 16 novels in a wide variety of fantastic worlds, including the ever-popular Dragonlance saga. She is a member of ASCAP and the Science Fiction and Fantasy Writers of America, and has been nominated for multiple Origins Awards. Ree currently works professionally as a narrative designer for ArenaNet on the internationally acclaimed MMORPG guild Wars 2. Her credits include traditional pen and paper RPGs such as Star Trek, Deadlands, World of Warcraft, and 7th. She worked as lead writer for Legend of the Five Rings, both CCG and RPG, and was a primary designer for the Warlord CCG. Ree holds a master's degree in myth and literature, performed her doctorate studies at UNC Chapel Hill, and now lives in Seattle, where she spends her time writing, playing ERPs, morgues, and LARPs, and being handmaiden to the grand adventures of Cat. Don't miss these other thrilling novel-length fantasy adventures from the world of Guild Wars. Edge of Destiny by J. Robert King. Ghosts of Ascalon by Matt Verbeek and Jeff Grubb.